There's a difference between luck and longevity. Some plants give you a moment of good energy, a fleeting burst of uplift. But the money tree, it does something much deeper. It holds wealth for you when your confidence wavers. It roots your intention when life becomes chaotic. It doesn't just sit there looking decorative, it becomes an anchor. In Feng Shui, we call it a living stabilizer of fortune. And in today's world, where the pressure to chase, to hustle, to constantly produce is louder than ever, this plant offers a radically different rhythm. It says, grow slow, but grow strong. Too many people try to build their prosperity from the outside in, stacking tasks, collecting strategies, buying more, pushing harder. But real abundance, the kind that lasts through market shifts, emotional burnout, and personal transformation, starts somewhere else. It starts beneath you, in the root, in the foundation. And the money tree, when placed with intention and care, doesn't just decorate your space. It trains your space to support your path. So in this video, we're not going to repeat what everyone already says about it. You already know about the braided trunk. You've seen the glossy leaves. What we're going to do instead is go deeper into where this plant should live, into what it asks from you, and into how it begins to shape not just your home, but your behavior, your mindset, and your sense of alignment when it comes to money. We'll explore placement mistakes that block its energy, real enhancements that make it work harder for you, and a story you've never heard about how one of the world's most successful women used this plant at a turning point in her life. So before we dig in, I want to invite you to do something small, but meaningful. If you're here not just because you want a nice-looking house, but because you're ready to build a more stable, more aligned, more prosperous life from the inside out, give this video a like, share it with someone who's trying to rebuild, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're growing toward 2,000 subscribers, and with your support, we'll keep delivering this kind of grounded, practical, and beautiful wisdom for homes that aren't just designed, but are alive with purpose. Because luck may knock, but it's foundation that makes it stay. Let's begin. The energy signature of the money tree. The money tree is not just a popular houseplant, it is a coded expression of elemental balance. In the language of Feng Shui, every part of its structure plays a symbolic role in how energy is received, stored, and released into your space. When you look closely at the braided trunk, you're not just seeing an aesthetic choice, you're seeing wood energy shaped by intention. Braiding in energetic terms means unification. It's the coming together of separate paths, separate goals, even separate anxieties, into one cohesive current that doesn't snap under pressure but bends with resilience. That braided trunk whispers a message to the room it stands in. We can grow together, we can hold complexity and still rise. And above it, those glossy green leaves, usually arranged in clusters of 5, mirror something far more ancient than modern decor. They mirror the wuxing, the 5-element theory that underpins all classical Feng Shui. Each leaf becomes a living placeholder for one of those core energies: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And when these elements work in harmony, they don't just beautify a room, they regulate it. They create a living equilibrium that can stabilize your emotions, sharpen your decisions, and quietly influence the financial and creative cycles of your life. Wood is the element of vision, of expansion. It's the part of you that dreams beyond your current limitations. The money tree is inherently a wood plant, but its structure allows it to channel that energy without becoming chaotic. Fire is the element of visibility, passion, action. It's reflected in the energy the plant evokes when placed in sunlight, and how it warms the space with its vibrant, growing qi. Earth is the container, the stability, the trust in long processes. It lives in the pot, the soil, the roots that take their time without apology. Metal is refinement, decision, clarity. It's echoed in the roundness of the leaves and the symmetry that forms naturally without human pruning. And water is adaptability, flow, resourcefulness. It exists in how the plant responds to moisture, in how its growth is affected by hydration cycles, and how it mirrors your ability to replenish yourself through care. When you place a money tree in your space, you're not just bringing in greenery, you're inviting in an elemental dialogue. You're giving the room a biological compass, a rhythm that favors harmony over haste. Its slow growth is not a flaw, it's the point. Because in Feng Shui, we do not chase prosperity, we cultivate it. The money tree is not for those seeking overnight miracles. It is for those building slow revolutions. Its strength lies in its refusal to rush. In homes where energy is anxious, this plant brings tone. In homes where money comes but doesn't stay, this plant teaches consistency. It doesn't spike, it sustains. And that distinction is everything when your goal is not just financial increase, but emotional durability. So often people misunderstand the energetic difference between accumulation and alignment. Accumulation is about collecting more stuff, more tasks, more movement. Alignment is about finding a rhythm that feeds itself, that doesn't require constant force to keep going. The money tree, when placed with understanding, begins to align your space to that rhythm. You'll notice it in the way your thoughts organize more calmly, in the way new ideas surface, not in bursts, but in sequences. You'll notice that you take fewer frantic actions and more deliberate ones. You'll sense a grounding in the space, a sense that you are being held, even if nothing dramatic is happening. That's the work this plant does. Quiet, subtle, foundational. There's also something emotionally stabilizing about watching it grow. Unlike faster plants with wild, vertical shoots or constant leaf drops, the money tree expands gently. One new leaf, then two, then a small extension at the stem, and every time it does, it becomes a mirror for your own growth. Not explosive, but lasting. Not performative, but embodied. This is why so many people instinctively place their money tree near desks, vision boards, or places of decision-making. It's not just for luck, it's for the energetic modeling of calm progress. It teaches you how to hold your goals with steadiness, how to grow without burnout, and how to appreciate the small signs of movement that most people overlook in their race toward the next thing. Financial health, after all, is rarely about one big break. It's about structure, sustainability, being able to hold wealth, not just generate it. And in Feng Shui, this is exactly what the money tree supports. It provides a nonverbal reminder to be patient with your process, to stop comparing your timeline to others, to recognize that consistency, not intensity, is what allows wealth to deepen and endure. When placed correctly, the money tree begins to participate in your household's narrative. You'll notice that conversations about money become less tense, that ideas about income feel more supported by action, that your habits, especially around saving, spending, or planning, start to become more centered. This isn't magic, it's resonance. It's your space aligning with your values. And once that alignment begins, it feeds itself. So this plant, though often bought casually, deserves reverence. It is more than a symbol. It is a spiritual tool with biological intelligence and cultural depth. It has been used in Chinese culture for generations, not just in homes, but in shops, in temples, in banks, as a living partner in the creation of prosperity. And unlike talismans that sit dormant, the money tree lives. It moves, it breathes, it responds to light, to water, to time. It becomes part of your household rhythm. And that's why, when tended with attention and respect, it gives back in more ways than one. Where to place it. Placement is not just about where something fits, it's about where something functions. In Feng Shui, the success of any energetic object depends not on what it is, but where it lives. The same money tree, when placed with careless intention, can wither both physically and energetically. But when positioned with alignment and awareness, it becomes a portal, not to superstition, but to flow. So when we ask where the money tree should go, we're not asking about shelf space. We're asking, where in your home is wealth meant to gather, not just visit? The first and most powerful location is the southeast corner of your home or a specific room. In classical Feng Shui's Bagua map, the southeast governs wealth, not just income, but the kind of wealth that stays. Generational fortune, stored energy, sustained growth. It is linked to the wood element, which is perfectly mirrored by the money tree's own identity as a wood plant. Wood in the southeast feeds fire, which in turn fuels reputation and upward momentum. When your money tree is placed here, especially in a corner that's well lit or animated by soft motion, its influence compounds over time. A small water feature nearby, such as a ceramic bowl with circulating water, can nourish its energy further, just as real rain supports the growth of forest roots. Or you might add a wind chime, not for sound, but for movement, inviting the air to carry fresh qi around its leaves. Remember, in Feng Shui, movement isn't always loud. Sometimes the whisper of energy is stronger than a shout. What matters is that your money tree feels surrounded by life, not isolation. Another highly beneficial placement is near your home's front entry. The entryway, or mouth of qi, is where energy first enters your space. It sets the tone for everything that follows: your mornings, your emotions, your subconscious expectations about what life brings to your door. When you place a money tree near this threshold, not blocking the door but gently positioned to the side, it acts like a silent greeter. It communicates to all energy that enters. This is a home that values abundance, stability, and welcome. This is especially useful for those going through periods of transition, starting a new business, entering a new chapter in career, recovering from instability, or trying to shift household habits around money. The money tree becomes a visual and energetic reminder that you are calling in prosperity, but you are doing it with dignity, not desperation. That's an important distinction, because in Feng Shui, the energy you bring toward your desires affects how they arrive. A money tree placed at the front of the house is like extending a handshake to the future you're ready to live. Now let's talk about where not to place it, because just as good placement amplifies a plant's qi, poor placement drains it. Avoid placing your money tree in the bathroom at all costs. Bathrooms are zones of downward water flow. The symbolism is clear and potent. This is where things get flushed, drained, cleansed. While that's essential in some contexts, it is deeply counterproductive for wealth energy. Even if your bathroom is clean and well lit, its underlying qi is about release, not retention. A money tree here may still grow, but energetically, it sends mixed messages. Hold wealth, but also release it quickly. That contradiction is enough to dull its influence over time. Equally important is to avoid placing your money tree in cluttered, chaotic zones. These are the places where visual noise overwhelms the mind. Stacked papers, tangled cords, baskets of things meant to be sorted one day. When you insert a money tree into this kind of environment, it becomes buried. It doesn't have room to breathe energetically or literally. Qi stagnates, and worse, you might begin to associate the plant with that same stuckness. You'll walk past it and feel guilty for what hasn't been cleaned, rather than inspired by what could be cultivated. Clean the area first, make space, then introduce the money tree like a guest of honor, not an afterthought. Another subtle yet significant guideline: don't place your money tree directly on the floor. In Feng Shui, energy sinks. Anything valuable placed at foot level begins to resonate with weight, fatigue, low self-worth. The money tree deserves elevation, not on a towering pedestal, but at least at waist or chest height, where its leaves can engage with the room, not the floor. Place it on a small wooden or ceramic stand. Let it meet your line of sight when you pass by. This simple change reinforces your relationship with your goals. You are not beneath them, dragging them upward. You are eye-to-eye, partnered. Now let's talk about what you place it in. The pot matters. A plant's container is its second home. It determines how it receives nutrients, how its roots expand, and how it communicates with the environment. For a money tree, avoid plastic pots, which often carry a synthetic energy and feel too disposable for something symbolizing long-term wealth. Instead, choose ceramic or clay pots in earth tones, ochre, terracotta, soft beige, or deep forest green. These colors ground the plant's energy and connect it to the earth element, providing a stable base for the wood element to rise from. This elemental harmony is subtle but deeply felt. Red pots are a nuanced topic. While red is an auspicious color in Chinese tradition, symbolizing fire, activation, and luck, it must be used carefully. A red pot can overactivate a money tree if placed in the wrong direction, especially in rooms that are already highly yang or overstimulated. If you do use red, temper it with small metal accents, like a gold coin at the base of the soil or a metal charm tied to the trunk to bring balance back. Fire and metal, in the cycle of elements, control and refine in one another. What you're looking for is not just beauty, but balance. And then there's the light. The money tree thrives in bright, indirect light. Placing it in a dark corner suffocates its potential, not just horticulturally, but energetically. It's like asking your ambition to grow in the dark. It's unfair to the plant, and it's unfair to you. Find a space that receives natural light during the morning or afternoon, but not harsh midday rays. Let the plant stretch toward that light. Let the room see it glow. Because when the plant feels energized, it begins to energize the space around it. That's the cycle Feng Shui is always looking to create. Support that loops back, nurturing both the object and the observer. One of the most overlooked aspects of placement is proximity to activity. Don't isolate the money tree in a corner no one visits. It wants to be near life. Conversations, laughter, movement. Place it in a zone where you spend time but don't rush. Near a reading chair, beside your desk, adjacent to your dining area. Let it witness your life. Let it be part of the daily narrative of your home. Energy isn't static. It wants to participate. When you place your money tree with care, it will grow in a way that mirrors the emotional and financial tone of your life. You'll see its new leaves form after you've made a bold financial move. You'll notice it shifting toward the light just as you begin to feel clarity again. These patterns aren't coincidence. They're conversation. Your home, your intentions, your plan, your path, they are all listening to each other. How Oprah Winfrey used her money tree. During periods of transition, the most successful people in the world rarely rely on intellect alone. They lean into space. They understand that when the external world is shifting, the internal structure of their environment must evolve alongside it. And in 2011, at a time when Oprah Winfrey was closing the chapter on one of the most successful talk shows in television history and preparing to launch her next era through the OWN network, she reportedly turned inward, not just emotionally, but spatially. Her Montecito estate, already stunning by architectural standards, became the canvas for a deeper recalibration. According to those familiar with the process, Oprah didn't just redecorate, she realigned. She consulted with designers who specialized not only in visual harmony, but in energetic intelligence. Those who understood that a home is more than its square footage or furnishings. It's a mirror, a vessel, a quiet influence that either holds your intention or dilutes it. And in this reinvention of home, One of the earliest additions was a small but intentionally curated indoor garden. It wasn't loud, it didn't sprawl across rooms, but in this hidden corner of the house, in a sunlit alcove adjacent to the east-facing study and flanking the grand entryway, she placed 3 money trees, each one chosen for its form, for its energy, and for the message it would silently deliver, not to guess, but to her own subconscious. The trees weren't clustered together in a dramatic display. They stood with space between them, like sentinels, each facing a direction chosen not for convenience, but for purpose. The east-facing placement, associated in Feng Shui with health, rebirth, and new beginnings, was no accident. This was a woman reintroducing herself to the world, not from a place of exhaustion, but of evolution. And just as she was shifting her public identity from talk show host to global visionary, she was also restructuring the energetic code of her home. The positioning of money trees near the main entrance served a second purpose. In Feng Shui, the entryway is the mouth of qi, the point at which all external energy enters the home. By placing a money tree there, Oprah wasn't simply decorating a foyer. She was declaring at the energetic threshold that her home was a space of prosperity, receptivity, and alignment. She was shaping what kind of energy crossed that boundary and what kind was gently repelled. Because it's not just about bringing in wealth, it's about protecting the container that holds it. And these plants, rooted, caifon, and unshaken, became both guardians and reminders. It's easy to assume that someone like Oprah wouldn't need a money tree. After all, her name is synonymous with success. But this assumption misses the deeper truth of Feng Shui and of wealth itself. Money doesn't always flow where you expect it, and it certainly doesn't stay just because you've accumulated it. Wealth, like water, requires channels, containers, structure, even for billionaires. And in moments of transition, when an old path ends and a new one begins, those containers must be redesigned. Because success in one chapter doesn't automatically carry over to the next. It must be energetically invited, welcomed, and stabilized. Oprah understood this. Her use of the money tree wasn't ornamental, it was directional, and that direction was inward. Think about what she was stepping into: a new network, a new brand, a new level of visibility, but also vulnerability. OWN wasn't just another media project, it was an extension of her purpose. And purpose, unlike career, cannot be protected by contracts alone. It must be reinforced by the energy around it. The decision to include money trees in her most frequented zones was a way of building that reinforcement, not publicly, not performatively, but spiritually. The story also invites a deeper reflection for anyone watching. If someone who already has it all still takes the time to align their environment before launching their next chapter, what does that say about the rest of us? Not in terms of comparison, but in terms of priority. Most people overhaul their finances, their strategy, their schedule, but they overlook their space. And yet it is space that whispers to us when no one is looking. It is space that either nurtures our belief systems or erodes them. And plants, especially living energy conductors like the money tree, are one of the most overlooked but powerful tools in that energetic dialogue. So no, the money trees didn't make Oprah wealthy. She did that through years of service, brilliance, resilience, and clarity. But the trees helped her hold that wealth with grace. They helped her receive more without anxiety. They helped her rest without guilt. And perhaps most importantly, they helped her reshape her personal space to reflect her new professional vibration. That's what living design does. It supports the unseen work of becoming. And this isn't about idolizing a celebrity. This is about remembering that the same principles apply to all of us. Whether you're relaunching a career, rebuilding a relationship, or redefining how you hold yourself through transition, the placement of a plant, if done with care, can be more than a design choice. It can be a decision to support your future before you've even arrived there, because the energy of your space will greet that future before you do. That's the real takeaway. Energetic support matters at every level, from the entrepreneur launching a first idea in a studio apartment to the media mogul relaunching her brand in a mansion. The scale changes, the wisdom doesn't, and the money tree remains what it has always been. Not a quick fix, but a quiet ally. Not a magic wand, but a mirror. It reflects what you're ready to grow, and if placed with intention, it will hold that growth, even in the moments when you forget to hold it for yourself. Common mistakes: every plant has needs. But when that plant also functions as an energetic anchor, as the money tree does, its care becomes symbolic as much as horticultural. Each act of watering, trimming, placing, or neglecting becomes more than maintenance. It becomes a message. In Feng Shui, physical actions have metaphysical echoes, and the way you treat your money tree quietly reflects the way you manage your finances, your opportunities, and your energetic boundaries. When we forget this, we make small mistakes that ripple into greater misalignments. And in time, the plant that was meant to energize your wealth starts to absorb confusion instead. The first and most common mistake is overwatering. Many people assume that more water equals more life, but in Feng Shui, excess is rarely a virtue. Water is one of the 5 elements. It represents flow, wealth, adaptability. But when water overwhelms wood, it doesn't nourish, it drowns. When your money tree sits in perpetually wet soil, the roots begin to soften, then rot, then dissolve. That decomposition isn't just botanical, it's symbolic. In energetic terms, rotting roots translate to decaying financial consistency. It's a quiet metaphor that your base, the part of your life meant to be stable, is suffocating under emotional or energetic overflow. Perhaps you're absorbing too much stress, taking on too many goals, trying to please too many people at once. The soil of your life never gets to breathe, and the money tree, being sensitive to this rhythm, starts to mirror it. The solution isn't hard, but it does require discipline. Let the soil nearly dry before you water again. Use pots with proper drainage so that no moisture gets trapped where you can't see it. Trust that the plant doesn't need constant feeding. What it needs is rhythm, and so do you. Wealth too flourishes in rhythm, not in floods. The second mistake is placing the money tree in a dark or forgotten corner. Just because a space fits doesn't mean it serves. The money tree thrives in bright, indirect light. That light is not just a horticultural requirement. It is symbolic of vision, of clarity, of attention. A plant stuck in a shadowed corner receives neither nourishment nor recognition. Its leaves begin to curl inward, its growth slows, and it communicates stagnation. In Feng Shui, light is yang energy, active, illuminating, forward-moving. Without it, your plant becomes energetically invisible. And when that happens, so does the intention you placed in it. A dim corner is where forgotten dreams go. And if you park your money tree there, you're quietly telling your subconscious that your financial alignment isn't worthy of daily attention. You are saying, this matters, but not enough. So take a moment to reassess. Is your plant positioned where the sun brushes it in the morning? Is it somewhere you pass often, glance toward, or sit beside? Can you actually see it unfolding its leaves toward brightness? Or is it silently surviving behind a couch or bookshelf? You don't need dramatic lighting, just enough light to let the money tree signal to your space and your nervous system that energy is moving upward, that growth is available, that you haven't forgotten your path. The third mistake is neglecting the plant's surface health, specifically allowing dead leaves to remain, yellowing to spread, or dust to accumulate. These may seem like minor oversights, but they carry deep energetic weight. In Feng Shui, every living object radiates qi. When a part of it dies and remains attached, that qi becomes muddled. Dead leaves are not neutral. They are stuck energy, and when you leave them in place, you're tolerating stagnation. You're saying, this decay is acceptable in my field. Over time, that tolerance creeps into other areas of life. A drawer that stays messy, an email that never gets answered, a financial habit that drags month after month. The yellowing of leaves represents fading vitality. The dust on their surface dulls the plant's ability to breathe and photosynthesize, and symbolically, it dulls your own clarity. Pruning isn't just for aesthetics, it's a sacred act of intention. It tells the universe, I take care of what supports me. I remove what no longer serves. I make space for the next phase of growth. Beyond trimming, rotation matters too. A money tree that only grows toward one direction becomes imbalanced, not just in form, in metaphor. It leans. It favors one energy path while neglecting others. This often mirrors people who pursue wealth from one avenue only, while ignoring intuitive nudges or alternative channels. Simply turning the pot every few days reintroduces equilibrium. It distributes light. It invites wholeness. In Feng Shui, this movement says, I'm open to all directions of fortune, not just the obvious ones. It also prevents overdevelopment in one sector of your life at the cost of another. Another subtle mistake that's often overlooked is over-accessorizing the money tree. People are drawn to the idea of amplifying luck, so they start adding crystals, coins, wind chimes, red ribbons, bells, figurines. But too much symbolism can suffocate intention. The plant becomes a crowded altar instead of a clear channel. Remember, the power of Feng Shui lies in simplicity paired with specificity. One red ribbon tied with care is stronger than 5 ribbons knotted in haste. One coin placed with gratitude is more effective than a bowl of coins left to collect dust. When it comes to symbolic enhancement, quality and clarity matter more than quantity. The energy should feel elegant, not noisy. Also, be careful of placing other objects on top of the soil, especially heavier synthetic ones. These can compress the energy field of the plant and trap the roots both physically and symbolically. If you want to enhance, use natural elements. A river stone, a gold-painted pebble, a small wooden token, and always with mindfulness. Ask yourself, does this object support the plant's energy or distract from it? Finally, one of the most overlooked mistakes is treating the money tree as a visual object instead of an energetic ally. This happens when people buy it because it's cute or on trend or recommended by someone else, without any real connection to its purpose. But a plant knows when it's being respected. It responds to your energy, not just your water. So check in. Do you greet it when you pass? Do you thank it for its work? Do you notice when it shifts, when it adds a new leaf, when it bends slightly to find more light? These small acts of awareness deepen your relationship with it. They make the plant part of your energetic household, not a background character. In the end, each of these so-called mistakes is not a failure. It's an invitation to slow down, to notice, to realign. Your money tree is not fragile, but it's responsive. And when you care for it with attention, it does more than survive. It collaborates. It becomes a partner in your financial clarity, your emotional steadiness, and your spiritual resilience. How to enhance its power? A money tree, by its very nature, is already working in your favor the moment it's placed with intention. But in Feng Shui, there are ways to amplify what is subtle, to strengthen what is already working quietly beneath the surface. Enhancement, when done correctly, is not about adding complexity, it's about deepening resonance. You don't force the plant to do more. You simply remove resistance, elevate its environment, and honor its purpose with precision. The result is not just a healthier plant, but a more cooperative flow of energy between your goals and your space. Enhancing the money tree starts with color. And in classical energy design, few colors speak more boldly than red. Tying a red ribbon or thread around the braided trunk of your money tree is not a decorative choice. It's a declaration. In Feng Shui, red activates fire energy, the spark of visibility, movement, and passion. When tied with care around the base or the center of the braid, that red ribbon becomes a catalyst. It says, "I'm ready for courage." It says, "I'm willing to be seen." It adds just enough yangs to the plant's natural wood element to help you step forward rather than simply stand still. And while red is powerful, it must be used in balance. Don't drape the plant in fabric or wrap every stalk. A single knot tied with presence is stronger than a tangle of string done in haste. Let it be a symbol, not an embellishment. Another powerful enhancement lies beneath the surface, literally. Placing 3 Chinese coins under the base of the pot or resting gently on top of the soil is a classical Feng Shui ritual that symbolizes the continuous circulation of wealth. These coins, usually tied together with red string in a triangle formation, represent heaven, earth, and humanity, a sacred trinity in Eastern cosmology. Their presence at the foot of the money tree links your efforts, humanity, with the unseen forces of the universe, heaven, and the grounded support of your environment, earth. When you lay these coins, do it with clear intent. Don't just drop them casually. Pause. Hold them in your hands, close your eyes, and speak your intention aloud. It could be a goal, a feeling, a frequency, something like, "May my efforts multiply with grace," or "Let what I grow support others." Then place them at the roots, knowing they are now part of the foundation. Don't disturb them once they are placed unless you are replanting. Let them settle, just like you are asking your wealth to do. Light, too, is a form of enhancement, and not just for photosynthesis. In energetic terms, light is clarity. It's the illumination of possibilities. It's the revelation of what was previously hidden. When you place a soft, warm lamp behind or beside the money tree, especially if it resides in the southeast wealth corner, you create what is known in Feng Shui as a sunrise effect. The light doesn't just brighten the room, it wakes the plant. It signals to the qi in the room that growth is beginning, that attention is being paid, that this space is not dormant, it is alive and participating in your forward motion. A small amber lamp on a nearby table or an overhead pendant that casts gentle morning hues can transform the way the money tree interacts with the room. Avoid cold fluorescent light or harsh spotlights. The energy should be inviting, not interrogating. Think golden hour, not size stadium. You can also enhance the money tree's power by refining what surrounds it. A cluttered backdrop diffuses its message. A clean, harmonized setting amplifies it. Place intentional objects nearby, nothing that competes, but items that reinforce the frequency. A simple bowl of tumbled green aventurine or citrine can support abundance energy. A small ceramic vessel of salt can purify the air. Even a handwritten affirmation, folded and tucked beneath the pot, serves as an energetic offering. These small touches elevate the plant's role from passive greenery to spiritual participant. Another enhancement that often goes unspoken is sound. In some homes, silence is nourishing. In others, silence is heavy. Placing the money tree near a zone where music is played, or near a soft-sounding fountain or occasional chime, creates vibrational feedback. The qi doesn't stagnate, it circulates, and plants respond. Even if the sound isn't constant, the energy knows movement is possible. That possibility alone keeps things from becoming stuck. Air movement matters too, but it must be subtle. A gentle window breeze or a low, oscillating fan set far from the plant can simulate wind in nature. But never place the plant directly in front of a strong draft or heating vent. The message should be, you are supported, not you are bracing. Balance is everything. If your space allows, consider placing a reflective surface near the money tree, but not directly behind it. A mirror angled across the room can symbolically double the abundance energy, but if placed too close or facing the plant directly, it can create hyperactivity or energetic rebound. Instead, use mirrors to invite light into the room, not to exaggerate the plant itself. Let the money tree hold its own presence without becoming a spectacle. And finally, one of the most powerful non-material enhancements you can offer your money tree is attention. Not obsessive care, not constant checking, but presence. Once a week, place your hands near its leaves. Don't touch, just hover. Close your eyes and speak silently or aloud. Thank you for holding this space with me. That gratitude creates a resonance that no object can replicate. It forms a partnership. And in Feng Shui, the most powerful enhancements are those rooted in mutual respect. You're not just trying to activate energy, you're trying to co-regulate with it. When you enhance the money tree in these ways, you are telling the chi of your home that wealth is not an accident. It's cultivated. That growth is not forced. It's fostered. And that prosperity is not something you manifest once. It's something you maintain through rhythm, attention, and care. Who should use this plant? The money tree isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but its strength lies in the kind of people and life phases it supports best. Not everyone needs rapid acceleration. Some need rooted growth. Some need to believe again in the idea that progress can be calm. Some need to remember that wealth isn't always a flood. It can be a steady spring beneath its surface, waiting to be tapped with consistency and trust. And that is exactly where the money tree shines. It's best suited for individuals or households who are entering a beginning, not necessarily dramatic or grand, but quietly essential. Entrepreneurs stepping into a fresh venture, whether from passion or necessity, will find this plant a fitting energetic companion. When you build something from scratch, the surrounding energy matters. Every email you send, every decision you make, every conversation you hold about your vision, it's all influenced by what's around you. A money tree near your desk, aligned with natural light and placed on a firm surface, becomes a co-creator. It doesn't push, it holds. It offers silent reinforcement that says, stay the course, even when no one else sees the path yet. This plan is equally powerful for households recovering from instability, be that financial, emotional, or relational. When you've been through a period of strain, it's easy to associate wealth with loss or pressure. You may flinch at good news, waiting for the catch. You may find it hard to fully receive without wondering when it will disappear. The money tree, placed intentionally in the center or southeast zone of your home, becomes a retraining tool for your nervous system. It helps reintroduce the idea that stability is possible again, not in a loud declarative, but in a consistent visual rhythm. Each week that the plant thrives, each new leaf that opens, becomes a quiet symbol of progress, of healing, of forward motion that doesn't erase the past, but chooses not to be ruled by it. And then there are those who, by nature or by fatigue, are ready to slow down, not to quit, not to retreat, but to stop chasing energy that doesn't return, to stop pursuing goals that cost more than they return. For these individuals, the money tree serves not just as a wealth activator, but as a permission slip. It reminds you that rest is part of the cycle, that wealth built slowly often lasts longer. That grounding does not mean stagnation. In fact, in classical Feng Shui, wood element plants like the money tree are associated not only with growth, but with maturity. They encourage you to expand not by speed, but by depth, to root before you reach, to build wealth not through scattered effort, but through anchored presence. This is why the money tree works so well in bedrooms, studios, offices, and meditation corners, Zones where pause is honored, not punished. Energetically, the money tree aligns best with people who are patient, or those who want to become more so. It doesn't pair well with erratic, high-intensity spaces where items are constantly moved or ignored. It prefers households and individuals who treat it like a partner, not a prop. If you are someone who enjoys refining the energy of your space, not with extravagance but with meaning, you'll thrive with this plant. If you light incense and actually stay for the scent, if you wipe your countertops and feel like you're calming your thoughts, if you rearrange a bookshelf not just for color but for flow, then this plant will speak to you, not in words but in feeling. It will grow in a way that mirrors your emotional readiness. It will respond not just to light, but to attention. There's a subtle compatibility test that Feng Shui practitioners often reference. How does the plant make you feel in the first 10 seconds of looking at it? Do you feel rushed? Do you feel nothing? Or do you feel just a little more grounded, a little more focused, a little more aware that your surroundings are participating in your vision? The money tree works best for those who want to build their lives from that place, from that depth, from that agreement between space and soul. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. Some people need bold, high-heat energy. Some need explosive color. Some need stimulation to break through stagnation. But if what you need is structure, rhythm, emotional steadiness, and a sense that you're not building alone, then the money tree is not just a plant. It's a co-architect. And in a world that's constantly urging us to speed up, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose something that reminds you to slow down, hold strong, and grow on your own terms. Finally, a money tree won't promise you overnight success. It won't shower you in lottery wins or fix a lifetime of financial chaos with one well-placed leaf. But that was never its offering. What it will do is stand with you through doubt and determination, through seasons of stagnation and spurts of growth. It will remind you that stability isn't a moment, it's a practice. And that building a life rooted in abundance is not about force, but about rhythm. This plant doesn't demand applause. It doesn't bloom in dramatic bursts. It simply grows quietly, patiently, teaching you how to do the same. In Feng Shui, we say that wealth does not grow from willpower alone. It grows from your environment, from how you hold your space, from what your room says when you are not speaking, from the objects you surround yourself with, and the intention they carry even in your silence. A money tree, when placed with awareness and care, becomes more than a plant. It becomes a presence, a mirror, a stabilizer that continues to show up for you, even on the days when you forget to show up for yourself. And so the question is not whether your money tree is working. The question is, are you working with it? Are you tending to it the way you hope your goals will tend to you? Are you pruning what no longer serves? Watering only what's ready to grow? Placing it where the light comes in, not just where there's space on a shelf. In Feng Shui, everything is a message, and the message this plant sends is about consistency, clarity, and care, not just in wealth, but in how you relate to your own power. So let's turn that awareness into a ritual. Scroll down and leave a comment below. Where have you placed your money tree? Is it energizing your space, or has it become another piece of background noise? Are you connecting with it, or just coexisting? I read every comment, and together this community is learning what our ancestors knew long before the word prosperity became tied to numbers. That fortune isn't just gained, it's cultivated, it's held, it's lived. And if this video helped you see your space differently, or reminded you of something deeper than decor, I invite you to gently share it with a friend who's building a new home, rebuilding their financial life, or just seeking quiet grounding after too many loud solutions. And don't forget to subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're growing toward 2,000 followers, and your support doesn't just help this channel, it helps keep the flow of grounded, ancient energy wisdom alive in modern homes like yours. Thank you for allowing me to share this space with you. Until next time, may your roots grow strong and your path unfold with grace.